All right, this is the third video in the series on OOP concepts and terminology for VB. And in this presentation, I want to take a look at some of the basic class and objects concept or object concepts that are transferable regardless of what language you might be developing in. Objects themselves have properties and methods, and they can generate events. Creating an object, so creating one of these dog objects, is actually called instantiation or instantiating the object. The object is then referred to as an instance of the class. So the class itself has all of those descriptors in terms of the properties, the methods, and events that together can make up any individual instance. In object-oriented terminology, encapsulation, the term encapsulation refers to the combination of the characteristics and behaviors of an item into a single class definition. So if we think about that, when we want to create a dog class, for instance, we want to encapsulate everything about that dog in terms of the class that is common to all instances of the dog class. So the properties, methods, and events. So things like properties such as breed, color, size, methods such as sit, stay, come, and the events that these objects can generate would be things that would have to be responded to or should be responded to, such as beg, bark, and scratching at the door. Designing classes. First term we have to deal with is something called abstraction. So thinking about those characteristics and behaviors that your objects might require, that's the process of abstraction. And as you consider those objects and the characteristics and behaviors, the characteristics themselves, so in the case of the dog, the things like the breed, the color, the size, they become variables. Those properties are variables, and the behaviors become sub-procedures or methods. And we'll take a look in VB in terms of something called properties, property procedures, and then of course methods, and then something else called a function procedure. And the variables inside the class really should be hidden. So we create properties or property methods that will actually access those attributes or variables of the class. Every object you create, so every instance of the dog class, would have its own set of attributes, and we refer to those as instance variables. Sometimes, though, there are something called shared attributes and shared methods, where there's one copy that's accessible by all objects created of the class. Generally, in terms of business objects, you would see those used for totals and counts, summary type data. Instance members, the thing to keep in mind is that each instance of the class has its own copy of that instance member. Ensure that those values stored in those data attributes of the class, keep them hidden. We'll actually only allow access to them through special methods called get and set property procedures. Thus, we're not going to allow any access, direct access permitted to any of those attributes by any class outside of the business logic. We can write validation rules right inside our special set procedure that we're going to design as part of the class. And of course, it probably goes without saying that those get procedures are the ones that will actually read values from those attributes and pass them through to a presentation tier or back to the data tier. So that's a bit of an overview in terms of object and class terminology. The next video will actually take a look at abstraction in action.